everyone, I'm Chloe Johnson and welcome to this Fresh Business Thinking webinar series, Lockdown Learning for Businesses, supported by BT. Fresh Business Thinking is proud to be a part of Skills for Tomorrow by BT, which is helping 10 million people in the UK make the most of life in the digital world. Working with us and other leading digital skills, enterprise and community organisations, BT has created and collated some of the best advice, information and support in one easy place to navigate. It's easy for anyone to access our webinars as well as discover other ways they or their family and friends can grow their confidence and skills to make the most of tech. All it takes to get started is to visit www.bt.com/skillsfortomorrow or by clicking on the link in the comments section. Coronavirus has been a real challenge for small businesses and entrepreneurs across the UK. At Fresh Business Thinking, we're used to putting on events, sharing expertise and encouraging and supporting networking. Throughout the pandemic, we knew this simply couldn't just stop. Perhaps more than ever, this is a time as a business community, we need to come together and support one another. And we're lucky enough to work with organisations and individuals who are passionate about supporting entrepreneurs during this difficult time. One of those is our speaker today, Isabel Kelly, founder of Profit with Purpose, a consultancy committed to helping companies build social purpose into the heart of their organisation. Today, Isabel will share practical steps for identifying your company's purpose beyond profit, using the Sustainable Development Goals, and for putting it into action as you grow your business. Isabel will be talking for 40 minutes and then we'll have some time for Q&A. If you do have any questions, you can leave them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and we'll do our best to get to them later on in the session. There will be a few poll questions throughout the session today. Please note that all of these will be answered anonymously. That's all from me and I'll pass over to you, Isabel.
Hi, thank you everyone for joining and thank you Chloe for the introduction and the opportunity to speak about something that I am very passionate about, which is companies finding their social purpose beyond profit. And I wanted to just start off with knowing where you're all starting from on this journey. So our first poll, what best describes you? You're an entrepreneur, a non-profit, an SME, a larger company, or none of those, but this is something that you're interested in. Great. Okay, so we have a mix of, all of those, with actually none of those but interested in the topic being the most. Thank you. So now that I know a little bit about you, SMEs, we've got the most SMEs here. So here's a bit about me. So I guess I'm an entrepreneur as well. I started my business in 2015 after having worked for some big organisations, so Oxfam, Amnesty International, and then Salesforce for 12 years. But what I do now is a variety of things. I consult through my business. I work with MBA students at the Wayside Business School because more and more of those graduates want to do work that has social purpose. I'm on the board of a tech company, a purpose-driven tech company called The Panoply, and I'm on the board of the UK's largest matched funding charity called The Big Give. Some of my clients, I've worked with SMEs, non-profits, so smaller companies, as well as some bigger ones. So some of my clients include Sage, the Kensington and Chelsea Foundation. I worked with Gucci for a couple of years, obviously a very big company, but then smaller companies such as Shiva Hotels, who are in the process of growing, expanding their hotel base and wanted to make sure that they'd got a purpose embedded in their company before they grow and before they start the next phase of becoming a larger company. So everybody's talking about purpose. What does it mean? So, there are lots of different reasons for doing it. Some of them are because you have to. So with your environmental reporting, that's now quite often a legal requirement for many companies. But also there's emphasis coming from all sorts of places. So Larry Fink, who's the chairman and CEO of BlackRock, that manage trillions of investment funds, has said this: the public expectations of your company have never been greater, and without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can achieve its full potential. I mean, it's a very powerful message to give to larger companies and to small ones. I realise that some people already have an idea of what their purpose is, and that might be your profit-focused purpose. But I'm going to try and give you some practical steps to think about how you also embed a social purpose in the core of everything that you do. And just to start off with, I'm not very good at moving these slides, sorry. We've been hearing, the focus of these webinars is on what we have learned during lockdown. And we learned a lot about what people as employees and as customers think about companies and how they've behaved during the pandemic. So Klaus Schwab, who's the founder of the World Economic Forum, and he and Paul Polman, the former CEO of Unilever, coined this phrase of the COVID corporate saints and sinners. And we've all seen the brands that have been criticised for their behaviour, that perhaps were making their employees still go into work while taking furlough money, and that have unusual tax arrangements and looking for a bailout. But we've also seen companies that have shone through, that were managed to preserve cash, but also at the same time turn their attention to what their employees need and what their communities need, and were really aware of what was going on in society around them and how they could pivot what they're doing to actually serve society and make people proud to work for them. So both types of companies have had a lot of media attention. And we know even before the pandemic that people increasingly want to work for and to buy from companies that don't divorce what they do from the world around them. And I think a characteristic of what we saw happening during the lockdown is that companies that are familiar at leadership level with talking about something other than their profit, the revenue, that's important, but equally important, those people need to be familiar with talking about purpose. And I think we saw that those companies were more able to pivot and think about what their responsibilities were to people and to communities. So what is purpose? So companies have been on a journey, and you might be somewhere on this journey, from thinking about giving money to philanthropic money, to charities and causes that you care about, to CSR, of thinking about what else can you do, what other resources have you got that you can give. It could include volunteering, but it might be your product or your service. To corporate responsibility, where you introduce elements of reporting and environmental and social elements across your whole business. Sustainability, or ESG, environmental social governance, which is the term most commonly used in the finance industry, is where you're getting more to having embedded practices across your business, which link to your brand and where you've got some metrics and reporting. And then purpose is where your left hand and your right hand are doing pretty much the same thing, and that how you're making your money is aligned to what your purpose as a company is, and how you're actually showing your responsibilities to both the environment and to society. So Chloe, could we have the second poll? So it would be really good to understand where you're at on this journey of having a purpose beyond profit in your business. So maybe you're just starting, maybe you've taken some action, maybe you've got a really great strategy, or maybe you already have something that is intrinsically part of your business. Great. So I can see again there's quite a clear mix, and taken some action. Great, thank you. So most people have taken some action, such as volunteer days. So I'm going to do a little nod here to an amazing man called Clay Christensen, who sadly died earlier this year, but he was at Harvard Business School, and he came up with the disruptive innovation theory. So the theory is that companies often move in their innovation and in their size beyond where any company actually, where any customer actually wants to or needs to buy what they've got. And this is often where you as an entrepreneur or an SME can create an opportunity. So you have an amazing opportunity to be disruptive and to come in and show that there are different ways of doing business. And I really think that you have an opportunity by having an embedded social purpose. It gives you a steal on the companies, the bigger companies that are perhaps finding it difficult to embed different behaviour in their business. Many of those companies sort of struggle to look authentic, even if what they're doing really is authentic. So you're really well positioned here to compete with bigger incumbents and to take the opportunity to showcase what you're doing to that new generation of employees, but also to customers that do want to buy from companies that have got a purpose and appear and are authentic about what they're doing. So those bigger, older companies, they may, they may lack diversity at their board level. They may be doing things in the older incumbent way. And I think you have this great chance to step up. One of the things that many of those companies, larger companies, are doing is revisiting why their company was started in the first place. So refinding their founder story. And of course, you as a founder have the opportunity to create that story at this stage of your business. You might not know, I didn't know until recently, that the founder of Andrews Estate Agents also founded Age UK and Oxfam. And that Andrews Estate Agents is owned by 3 charitable trusts. So we don't see that really in their brand or marketing. And arguably they're not making the most of that in this new climate of people wanting to buy from companies that are doing something beyond maximising profit. So I think companies of all sizes benefit from knowing what their purpose is. And it helps to set the moral compass for your decision making as you grow. And arguably, once you've got an idea of what your purpose is and you come across opportunities to do things that you don't think perhaps fit with your purpose, then you might not want to do it. You might want to make a decision, but you've got a basis on which to do that. So a really good example of this, a big company that do this, is J&J, Johnson & Johnson, who since they were founded have had a credo, and they use this apparently on a daily basis for decision making. Does this fit? Does this decision fit with what we are and espouse to be as a company, or is it in contravention of who we intend to be and how we want people to perceive us? Oh, sorry, slides. So how do you get started? And this is my third and final poll, but how many of you have defined a vision for your business of what your purpose is beyond profit? Okay, so it's it's pretty evenly split. So I would love you actually, if you want to share in the chat. Oh, it's exactly 50-50. How interesting. So if you'd like to share in the chat what your purpose story is and how you got there, that would be really interesting. And I was going to ask people at the end if you want to share that story about how you got to the purpose of your business. maybe your business has an intrinsic social or environmental purpose, and that kind of makes it easier. But even if you do have that, you still need to be able to articulate what that purpose is and why you do what you do, not just what you do. You need to be able to tell people what's that big, inspiring, world-changing objective that you're trying to work towards through your business. So above all, that purpose should be aspirational. It should be something that you can bring people along with. That attracts people to work for you, attracts people to invest in you, if that's what you're looking for, and becomes part of your brand and how you talk about your company and how your employees understand what their daily work is. So what I always recommend, and I showed the Sustainable Development Goals, which is what we're looking at here, to the CEOs of companies that I work with. So often people they don't feel equipped to articulate what they care about in a work environment. And so the UN Sustainable Development Goals is a really great opportunity to see nicely encapsulated what the world's greatest social and environmental issues are. And then it makes it easier. Like, what do we want to focus on? What aligns with what we are and what we do as a company? And what resources have we got that might actually contribute to achieving an objective towards one of these goals? You can pick more than one, but don't pick too many, because that will dilute your focus. And what I see with some of the clients that I work with is that they will choose something that really aligns with their business. So we were talking about Andrew's estate agents. So an estate agent might choose to be finding homes for homeless people. Gucci, who I used to work with, they choose to work, among other things, on the empowerment of girls and women, because that obviously aligns with who they are as a business. I worked with a publisher who they focus on the provision of education. So that it kind of makes sense that you can do something that aligns with what the resources are and what you do as a business. You need to also then identify your stakeholders. So who is the community that you do business in, with, that you employ? What are those things that are really important to those people? Who's in your supply chain? So where do your raw materials come from? What's your impact on the environment? And you can also use the Sustainable Development Goals. Each of them have targets and indicators to show how you might measure, track and report what you're doing. But once you've articulated your big vision, it's much easier for all of your things to flow from there. So some companies start with the tactics. They might start with a volunteer program or a charity partner. It's quite difficult then to know what it is that you're trying to achieve or how you've made progress against it. So as I said, I work with the Panoply, and we've recently gone through this exercise, so I thought I would share what we're doing. So the vision that we settled on is sustainable futures through digital transformation. And the Sustainable Development Goals that we chose are there on the right. So we chose them, I'll pick one of them. So gender equality. Clearly in the technology industry, and we're a technology company, there's an issue with attracting and retaining women in technology. So we thought that would be one of the really obvious goals to work on. So we've looked then at the targets and indicators underneath that and picked a number of activities and things that we're going to do. And we've also, because we're a small company, but we're growing, we've done it in such a way that we can use our resources and grow our programs as the company grows and expands its footprint in different locations. We've also created a Future Leaders program, which is just running at the moment, which is about enabling young entrepreneurs to get support from a tech company for the business that they hope to develop. So that's one of our tactics, but you can see how it aligns to both the Sustainable Development Goals we've picked, but also to the vision that we've decided on. And of course, you know, like with other companies, we have our code of ethics, we have a diversity and inclusion strategy, and we do our environmental compliance. So there's the fuller picture of how having a vision sets the groundwork from which all of the other things that you might be doing can flow. So you need to identify your resources and actions. So what are the things that you have as a company? So you may not want to do a volunteer program. For some companies, that's not relevant. It's not a best use of their resources or time. And it may not be that you've got any suitable activity, or it doesn't align to what you want to achieve. So what else have you got? You've got expertise, you've got brain power in your organization, you've got product or service, and it doesn't need to be money. You know, often as a small organization, the least of what you've got is money. So what else can you do, and how can you set that up so that it grows as you grow? Can you create a program that you can expand as you grow? Can you make a fundamental change to your product or your service so that it better reflects the ambition that you have in terms of your social objectives? Can you enable your people to spend purpose time? So this could be brain time. It need not be going out to volunteer or doing something outside the office, but how do you align your people's expertise, but also what they want to do and how they feel excited about engaging with your company with your purpose? So I mentioned at the beginning that I worked for Salesforce. So I joined Salesforce when it was pretty much a startup. So I joined in 2002, and from the outset, Mark Benioff, the CEO and founder, set up the purpose. We didn't call it that, it was the philanthropy, so that it would grow as the company grew. And Mark Benioff likes to say that at the beginning, it was easy to give 1% of product, equity and time to communities because there was no product, the equity wasn't worth anything, and there were very few people. But today, that has grown. It equates to, as you can see, about $230 million in grants, huge amounts of community service given, and over 37,000 nonprofits use their product. And the company is worth $228 billion. And actually, that has the structure of the purpose has contributed to their revenues as well, in that the nonprofits often then, beyond what they're given, they buy product as well because they find it really useful. So it has a dual purpose of being revenue generating as well as delivering on social outcomes. However, we set that up before the SDGs, before there was a lot more thinking about this. And we didn't really have an objective. We had the 1%, but it was really difficult to know whether we'd achieved anything. We could give input numbers, how many, how much, but the holy grail in the impact world is, what's your impact? What social impact have you actually made, and how do you know that you've progressed towards your vision? So as I said, we've got the SDGs these days. So bad at the slides, sorry. And you really want to know, how have you made progress towards your goals? So you can't measure everything, but you can try and at least to track what you're doing, to evaluate and report on what you're doing. And one day you might then also be able to report on your impact. So there are lots of different reporting frameworks for social purpose. For environmental compliance, that's more straightforward these days. There are frameworks that you have to report on, but we're not there yet for the social impact reporting. So again, a good place to start is the Sustainable Development Goals with targets and indicators. And also just be mindful of the difference between your inputs and your impact. So your inputs are the things that you're doing. And actually, one of the things you might want to do is set yourself a big headline metric. And that's when you know that you are making progress. If you think you've moved the needle on that, you can align your inputs. So the things you're doing, the tactics, the programs, the product and service change, how you're looking at your supply chain, how has all of that gone towards making a successful inroad on the bigger goal that you want to make? Reporting is really important. So great if you can report your social impact metrics and outcomes and impact alongside your financial reporting. It's such an important part of making this mainstream in business. And then talk about this as part of your brand with your employees, with your partners and suppliers, with potential investors in the future, or anyone really. It's so important that this becomes a core part of how people think about business. If you can, it's great to use a bit of technology to track and report, and it helps you then to evaluate, improve, change, and share what you're doing as a purpose-driven business. Another thing it's really great to do is to find your collaborators. So you, as the leader of your company, you need to own this and you need to own the vision, but you can't do it alone. And it's always a great moment when working with a business that it becomes public within the business that this is the focus, that the business is now going down, that they are interested in finding their social purpose. And people come out of the woodwork that perhaps never expected this to be part of their job, but they are excited and motivated to help a company think through what its social purpose is and how they can implement it. They often have great ideas that you haven't thought of yourself. This might also be the time to find your collaborators, such as a charity partner. So which organisations have expertise in the area that you think you want to address as your social purpose? And how can you partner with them? What do they need, and what have you got that they might be able to use? And I always say this is quite an interesting dynamic these days in creating partnerships between companies and charities. Traditionally, we've thought that companies hold all the cards, and often the relationship that then happens between a company and a charity is that the company think they need to do things to a charity and not with them. But actually, there are lots of things that companies can learn from charities and that result, really great results that come from their partnership. So I always say, partner, don't do things to an organisation, do things with them. Sometimes it's not easy to find a charity partner. Some charities are just not equipped to deal with working with companies beyond asking them for money. That's changing, and the chair of the Charity Commission has recently spoken about that and how companies really need to up their game. Charities need to up their game and think about how they're actually going to work with companies and meet the objectives that we all have together. And then this might be something that you take to your customers and partners, or it might be something that gets you in front of potential clients through a different avenue. So I worked early on with a tiny Internet of Things company that were looking to increase their footprint. They have a widget that sits on pipes and measures water. And they wanted to show it to a very large company and a government. And through the social purpose work that they were doing by working with a water project in a community, they were able to showcase their product to both the massive potential client and the government that they wanted to show it to. So I said this earlier, but you need to be authentic and you need to be aligned. So your left hand and your right hand should be doing the same thing at the same time. Again, you have the opportunity to do that from the outset as an entrepreneur or an SME. You won't have unusual tax arrangements. You've got the opportunity to set your supply chain up so that doesn't include slaves or children. You've got the opportunity to hire people and treat them well from the outset, you can make your company as diverse as you want it to be. And you can really intrinsically align what you do as a company and how you make your money with the purpose that you aim to fulfill. And I think once you've got all of that in place, you can enjoy the benefits. So trust and loyalty, again, many bigger companies are challenged on those two areas and are seeking to regain them. But you can do that from the outset as an SME or an entrepreneur. Increased morale, the need and wish to do meaningful work. It attracts talent and makes you a great place to work as a culture. And I think, again, I said it before, that it unleashes and engages your employees in a way that working in a company solely focused on the profit doesn't do. It increases your trust and legitimacy, and it can make you competitive and a leader within your industry. Probably this is of less interest at the moment, but in the future, if you're looking at investors or you work in a regulated industry, it's a really good way to mitigate risk and to make sure that you're included in all of those portfolios, including the increasing number of sustainable investment portfolios that are emerging. And finally, tell your story. It's so important to make this a part of your brand, and how you and your company talk about your brand, how your employees do, how your customers do, and how all the people that you come into contact with talk about your story, your company, and understand what it is you do and why you do it. So on that note, I will finish, but I think it would be really great if in the Q&A, if anyone wanted to tell their story about how they found the purpose that they work to and how they know that they've made some progress towards it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Isabel. We've had a few questions come in. So if you are interested in telling your story, we can open up your audio. Please just comment in the chat and let us know if you are interested in taking part. And then while we're waiting for a few to come through, let's answer some of the questions we've had come through in the Q&A. So the first question says, a great presentation. Thank you, Isabel. I'm currently working on finding my company's purpose. We're looking to add a section on our About page, but would you recommend that we reflect this change within our branding? Is this important?
Yes, it's really important. So it's the work that I do with some of the larger companies I work with who've got an established brand identity, is thinking, how do you then re-articulate that, or how do you kind of massage it so that it also encompasses your social and environmental purpose? And I found that using the wording from the Sustainable Development Goals is super helpful in that. Most companies already set an aspirational brand message, and so actually quite often it comfortably fits in that. But really it's important to hold it at brand level and then make it part of how people talk about your company and understand your company. So yes.
Next one that's come in, it says, do you think there's a worry that brands are using social purpose to be trendy?
Yes. So we have the term greenwashing previously, but we have the term purpose washing now. I think one of the biggest issues is that people just don't know what to do. So in the absence of knowing what to do, they seek to add a brand message, but without having much behind it. So there are some brand and marketing consultancies that do increasingly work with a company, not just on how to articulate the message, but will call them out and say, you actually need to be doing something before we can add that to your brand message. So there is, I mean, it's trendy, but I hope that we can use that in a way that contributes and adds value and makes it a normal part of doing business.
The next question is from Camille. Would you advise working with multiple charities that match your staff members' passions?
Yes, so it's a good question. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to achieve high employee engagement levels, perhaps through a volunteer program, not all of your employees are going to be motivated by working with the same charity. So if you're looking for high levels of engagement with charitable partners, then you do need to have a variety of organisations that you work with. However, if you're trying to align everything that you do, your product, your service, how you're reporting on the use of your resources towards your purpose, it's really difficult to do that with multiple charities. So sometimes the answer is to do it in different tiered objectives, in different tiered ways. So you have your core objective around which you have a small number of partners, charity partners, that help you to achieve that objective. But you also recognise that perhaps parts of your company work in communities where they've got something which is particularly important to them and really is motivating to local employees. And so there's some freedom that you need to have there in letting people pick smaller, other charity partners than the core ones that you're focused on. Yeah, I think you need the passion, but you need some focus as well.
Next question coming is from Harry. Having a social purpose is getting more and more popular within business. For consumers, I think that it's starting to become an important factor. Do you think that moving forward, consumers will expect brands to have a social purpose?
I do think that, and I think that some of that has been driven by younger people, employees and consumers. But what I've seen also is that has unleashed a memory in people that are older of why they went to work, of what their aspirations were, of why they buy from companies. So I know from Nationwide Building Society that when they realigned the articulation of their social purpose from a standard CSR volunteering-led program to something that was much more aligned to their business, and you will have seen the adverts that they did with rappers and aimed at younger people. But the outcome of that was that it re-engaged and reinvigorated older people who'd worked in their company for a longer period of time. So it re-engaged their talent, and it re-engaged people in remembering why they'd gone to work for that company in the first place, and that they were actually quite inspired by working for a mutual, not just a bank, but a company that had, again, in finding their founder story, had been started on a principle of purpose. I don't know if I answered the question there. What was the question?
I think that did answer the question. The question was around moving forward, do consumers expect brands to have a social purpose?
Yeah, and I think that's a really exciting new way of looking at businesses. And I think that consumers are increasingly becoming clever about seeing through whether or not a purpose is only brand and marketing, or whether there's something more substantive behind it. And increasingly, I think that companies need to be tracking and reporting and showing their outcome. It's not just pictures of people out in a corporate t-shirt or a company t-shirt doing volunteering, but it's like, why are we doing that? And what did that amount to when we did that?
So leading on from there, we've had a question come in saying, do you think the past few months will lead more businesses to put their profit front and centre of the business, given how popular these type of businesses have been during lockdown?
So put their profit front and centre, or their purpose?
Their purpose front and centre.
Okay. I do. I think that, yes, that a lot of companies need to have to think internally first. So how are they going to actually fulfill a purpose? What is it going to be? And then what changes do they need to make? Maybe they need to change their board. Maybe they need to change their brand. But I do think that more companies have understood, and we're hearing a lot of stories, as I said, in the media, those that have pivoted their business to serve society whilst also preserving cash, looking after people. We think that they're going to be doing well. In fact, I'm working with some Oxford students this week who are collecting information on this and doing a correlation between the companies that have been doing, the right thing, in inverted commas, versus the companies that were seen as the sinners, so that in future we can see how their performance tracks against moving towards being a more purposeful company. And I think for some companies, they've discovered this or rediscovered it, that they can actually continue to make profit and to deliver on a purpose, and it doesn't harm your business. In fact, it does it good.
We've had a question come in from Louise, who said, "Hi Isabel, thank you for a super presentation. One of the dangers I'm aware of with the SDGs is that companies will just cherry pick the ones that suit them rather than thinking about the whole process of the goals. How would you encourage businesses to think holistically about their SDGs and how it would truly beneficial for society?"
Okay, interesting. So my thinking, and Louise might think differently, is that as a company, you can't address all of them. So I know when the SDGs were first brought out, that a lot of companies used the SDGs like as a template, and they applied what they were already doing, like in a tick box exercise, to each SDG. But I think what we're trying to do is get companies to really engage and to engage deeply. And so whilst understanding it and acknowledging all of the SDGs, focusing on one or two or three of them is pretty much as much as you can do if you want to go deeply. And then I think really looking at the indicators and targets aligned to that. So I think my answer is to go deep rather than wide, but also it's really important to join that whole network of organizations globally that are aligning to the SDGs. More and more companies are doing that. And I think then collaborating with other companies that are working on the same SDGs as you is very powerful. And maybe aligning with companies that are working on different SDGs, but to get ideas of how you can contribute to them. But I don't think every company can be doing everything. You need to specialize, but you can definitely collaborate and join networks and organizations that are sponsoring and sharing and articulating the value of the SDGs for business.
Next one we've had come in is, what is your advice to keep purpose an ongoing priority for businesses and not to fall to the wayside when things get busy?
Yeah, I think it's embedding it, thoroughly embedding it, and making it an intrinsic part of your business. So my experience at Salesforce is perhaps relevant, that we were a business unit. We actually generated our own income, and that whenever there was a downturn in business or the business was changing or restructuring, that applied to our business unit as much as it did to anybody else's, but it didn't get cut because we were seen as contributing to the overall sort of purpose of the business. So we were contributing clients, so we were contributing great stories. So we had Greenpeace using Salesforce. that was a great story. So I think seeing your purpose not as an adjunct, as an add-on, as an afterthought, but as an intrinsic part of how you do business and how you report on your business. And, you know, think about how you fund it, and how you've structured it. So you really need to make sure that this is in the visibility of the CEO. You know, you as the entrepreneur, the founder, you need to be 100% aligned and on board. Your board need to be, and your employees need to be. So I think if it's threatened with being cut or, you know, ignored, that you kind of can't do that. As much as you can't get rid of your product or your service, this is part of who you are and how you do business.
And the next one we've had come in is moving back slightly to when we spoke about purpose washing. And this person wants to know how do they ensure that their purpose comes across the right way?
Yeah, so there's one way to do that and really be authentic about it. So, I mean, actually, at Salesforce, when we were donating product, I used to get called, I don't know if I should say this, like a heroin dealer. So that we were giving out product and getting people hooked on something great. But I would always take refuge in the fact that we'd given vast amounts of product to thousands of organizations and that it truly formed part of the core of the business. You know, cut Mark Benioff in half and he will tell you through and through, he will show you through and through that he has at the core of what his intention is for Salesforce.org is to equip nonprofits with great technology that better enable them to do what they want to do. And I think you just have to know that you are genuine, that you've got some goals and metrics, that you've committed resources. And I hope that your authenticity would then show.
Fantastic. We've had some great questions come in. We've also had a lovely comment from Albert, who said, this is a brilliant talk, very relevant to all businesses and business owners that have an ambition to do good business. Very clear experience and thoughtful. Well done, Isabel.
Thank you. So I was kind of aiming at ending early because I think people are slightly zoomed out. So I think we've perhaps achieved that.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the questions.
Did anyone want to tell their story of having
nobody has commented on the chat section. I feel our audience are being a little shy today. But I have included Isabel's LinkedIn profile and her email address in the comment section as well. So if you would like to get in touch or speak with her directly, then you can do so through those links. Thank you very much for joining us today, Isabel. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
I guess it's obvious what I would say, but you know, just start that work today of articulating what your purpose is. As an entrepreneur or as a founder of a business, I'm sure that you have that. You have the passion to start something, and therefore you have the passion, and you probably already have your story about how it is you want to change the world through your business. So I would just encourage you to articulate that, write it down, make it part of your brand, and make it part of your story.
Amazing. Thank you, Isabel. Our next webinar in the Lockdown Learning for Business series takes place on Thursday, the 17th of September at 2 o'clock with JournoLink, discussing using journalists to promote and advertise your business. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of the webinar coming at 5 p.m. today. You can find the replay and future webinars at www.freshbusinessthinking.haysummit.com or by clicking on the link in the comments section. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Isabel.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.